Alright, to start off, I make sure I have all my picture inked. So I'll take this old picture I did, and then when I make sure everything's inked properly, I color it like this. And this is when I start to actually plan out how I shade things. So what I usually do is I do one color at a time, like this red for example. And the first important thing that comes to mind when shading is the colors that are used. People who begin to shade will like to use a normal white or black, like this. And it may look good when you first start out, but as you go more and more down the line, when it comes to art, you'll see that it becomes really unprofessional, and I'll show you why. So when it comes to the color red, I use yellow to show light highlights and purple to show dark highlights. So now that we're actually getting into this, I use an airbrush to shade, and there's 4 different ones, but I only use this one and this one, which I'll get to later. So we're going to use the linear one to start out, and I make sure the opacity is pretty low, because if we set it to high then it's going to look really bad. But if we set it low, it'll just come out very smooth. Now at first this may look pretty wacky. The purple stands out a lot and it's going to look really weird, but once you zoom out and take the picture as a whole, you'll begin to see it kind of fits a bit, and as you'll see, I'll kind of blend it a little to make it easier on the eyes. But yeah, there we go. Basically I'm going to do this with the rest of the red. The reason why I don't do all of a section at one time, like if I just did all the red like this, is because if I were to shade this arm right here, it would go into the tail. So I'm just going to do the arms right now. There we go. Alright, there you go. Now once we got that covered, we can go on to different colors. The reason why I like to use light blue when it comes to this design is because shading can be really fun with it. So for blue, I use dark blue or purple when it comes to, you know, darkness, and teal or light green when it comes to lightness. Sometimes yellow as well. That can be really nice. So we're just going to shade like I was talking about with dark blue. Since they're both different kinds of blue, it kind of is easier to look at. But you get the point. I'm not going to spend forever on it to make it look good. But yeah. Same thing with white. The first thing that comes to mind would probably be gray or black. But even during white or black colors, it's important to use different kinds of colors than white or black to shade. I usually go with light blue. Here we go. It's kind of hard to see, but it really adds to it as a whole in the end. There we go. That'll do. Then we can go back and kind of blend it in a bit. There we go. So the next step is adding highlights, basically adding light to the figure. So again, I'll start with red. You want to make sure to get the whole face because it's going to be more finicky now that there's a dark color. A dark color involves that you want to select it as a whole, or try your best to. Now, like I said, I'm going to go with yellow. And instead of dark, we're going to make it really light because we're trying to make it seem as it was if it's light reflecting onto them. So we're going to make the opacity much lower than if we were shading. And we kind of want to spread it out. Make it where it's very hard to see, but once you keep messing with the size and opacity, you'll see it kind of pops out. We could just keep going. And once it starts to catch your eye, you can increase the opacity just a little bit and decrease the size. It's kind of like building a snowman or a tower. You just keep going up on the same spots with the same color. And now you can actually see little points where light kind of bounces off. You can tell that his hair is actually round now. Same thing with his cheeks and his ears. Now if we want to make something even more shiny, we can increase the opacity by a lot, decrease the size by a lot, then pick a very light color, like this taffy looking color. Kind of just, let's see, kind of just put it on there to make it stand out, look shiny. You may notice while we're shading or adding light to a figure, I'm still using a dark color, as in this dark yellow, but decreasing the opacity makes it seem lighter than it actually is. It gives it more of a feel, like a tangy feel. Alright. And we can keep doing this with the other reds. As you may tell, this takes a bit more when it compared to shading because there's actually more parts to it. And you don't have to make everything as shiny as these parts. But I usually like to make rounder objects like his fist here shiny. Show that it's actually a ball shape. But that's not needed. It's all up to your style, really. We'll go into the blues now. And like I said, I like to use green or yellow. Let's see. It's fun to experiment with these kinds of colors as well. As you can see, it can stand out a little bit. You can tell that it's green definitely. But if you're very easy with it and do it just right, it can really pop out in a good way. Here we go. I had some yellow and green there, and now it actually looks like light is reflecting off of it. When it comes to white, however, there's not much to add when it comes to light and shading and such. Kind of like with the blue, we just had to dab it on there, but since it's totally white, there's not much of light that could be reflected off of it. So we're just going to not do anything with it. And now this is kind of the basis. In some drawings I could say this is the end of the shading process, but there's like another step that I like to take sometimes, which is adding more, what would you call it? Just little strips that stand out more. So for the red, we were discussing yellow and purple. So what I like to do is I like to make highlights. That's the word I was trying to think of. And what we want to do is take this other airbrush, which is more pronounced than the other. It's more thick, but also more blurry. And we want to make the opacity pretty big this time, pretty big percent compared to when we were actually shading. We want to make the size small as well. Basically, kind of just want to easily go along sides where I think the light is not supposed to be shining, like on the bottom of the hair or under his sleeve or under his tail. You get the point. It's a small detail, but it really helps a lot. And then we'll do the same with other colors like blue. Let's see. There we go. And the cool thing about this is that you can do this with light as well. I usually go with a solid white this time. If not, a color next to it like this yellow. But this will do. These lines can be hard sometimes because they're supposed to be within the lines, so trying really hard to make them as close as I can to the line art without being distracting. Of course I rushed this picture to make a tutorial on it, but it'll do. So here's the basic shading process I do. After we're done with this, we can touch it up a bit. We can start that by taking these highlights and kind of playing with the opacity, make it a little bit lighter, less noticeable. They are highlights after all, so we don't want them to stand out very much. It's about 60. 60 is okay. And we can kind of make things more clean by going back and erasing or blending, as I like to call it, some of these colors. And you can do this with your airbrush and kind of just mix them in. For example, I used purple to shade it with this red, so I'm just going to use that red again to blend into it a little, as so. And there we go. One last thing is, it's not always needed, but as you can see, if I try to select this image or outside of the figure, it kind of doesn't capture all of it, and that's because some of my shading went outside of the lines. So if you want to be extra clean, especially if you're exporting it as a PNG or a transparent image, what you can do is make sure your tool captures every single little bit of these empty spaces. Like I'm doing right now. There we go. Kind of just delete that. And now it should be totally clean. And this is the simple way of how I like to shade my drawings.